We start our journey by going into the BIOS, a legacy chip first designed in 1981. The BIOS is a chip in your motherboard that's responsible for booting your bootloader and providing a simple API for that bootloader to use. Additionally, the BIOS performs some self-tests when the machine first turns on. It will check the RAM, for example, and ensure that the hardware is functioning properly. So a bootloader is written by the operating system manufacturer, such as Microsoft, and it's designed to load their product into memory, to load their operating system into memory and then transfer control to it. The code that you see on the right is a very simple bootloader, which doesn't actually boot any kernel into memory. It just uses the BIOS routine to draw the letter A to the screen. So what you're seeing is assembly language, is essentially one step up from machine code. And here you can see we move hexadecimal 0E into the AH CPU register. Then we move the character A into the AL register. Then we call init 0x10. The init 0x10 is part of the BIOS API, and it's used for drawing routines, such as when you want to write characters or pixels to the screen. So after the CPU executes the code init 0x10, the BIOS will take over and it will actually draw that character A to the screen and it will return control to us. The BIOS provides this standard API across all the BIOS chips, with every implementation different, but they share the same API. The BIOS has routines for all sorts of things, such as loading sectors from a disk into memory, video routines, and more. So how does the BIOS know what our bootloader is? Well, it searches for a boot signature, and that boot signature is 0xAA55. It will search the 510th byte on the disk to see if those next 2 bytes are that boot signature. If they are, it will load those 512 bytes into memory at address 0x7C00. It will then jump to that address, allowing our bootloader to start executing. Now, although the boot signature looks like 0xAA55 to us, because of something called endianness, those values are actually flipped when they're written to the disk, So the true value is 55AA. That's the true value, but to us it looks like AA55, which is why I say AA55. So one other thing to be aware of, the BIOS is 16-bit code only, So this means that you cannot work with 32-bit numbers or 64-bit numbers in the same way you would on a normal user program. Things are much more limited in this state, and you only have access to 1 megabyte of memory. So your disk is split into 512-byte chunks called sectors. The BIOS can read and write those chunks, but it has no idea what files are. It doesn't know how to read a file system. So when you're at this level, you do not have files. There's no such concept. Even if you have a file system on your disk, the BIOS doesn't know how to read it. You can only read in sectors, so you'll give a sector number like read sector 4, for example. That's the only way you can read and write sectors. And if you really want to read files, then you have to implement a file system on your kernel. Okay, modern computers can't really even boot these bootloaders anymore because the BIOS was replaced with the UEFI. So let's just get rid of the BIOS and we're going to go and move on to the more modern concepts. UEFI, or Unified Extendable Firmware Interface, replaces the BIOS. This is the firmware you find on modern computers. It has basic file system support, supporting partitions with FAT16 and FAT32 file systems. It has partition support, so it's able to read partitions. It has basic network functionality and the ability to read and write files. Most importantly, it's capable of putting the processor in 32-bit or 64-bit mode. Once in 32-bit mode, the processor can read up to 4 gigabytes of memory. Once in 64-bit mode, the addressable memory extends much further beyond that. So you might be wondering, how does UEFI boot us? Is it the same as the BIOS with a boot signature? Not quite. So what happens is UEFI will read a list of boot entries from the NV RAM, and then these entries contain information such as the partition ID, the disk that the partition is stored on, along with the EFI file which should be booted. So in UEFI we boot files, we don't boot sectors, UEFI firmware understands FAT16 and FAT32 file systems. Now these EFI files are similar to .exe files on Windows, apart from therefore kernel bootloaders, They're even structured quite similarly to exe files in their binaries. So in that boot entry contains the path to the EFI file that should be loaded into memory. So the EFI file is the bootloader, guys, okay? And the UEFI firmware will load that into memory. So if we're unable to find a bootable entry in the list, then many UEFI firmware will search all of the EFI partitions for EFI files. And there's a couple different paths they try. One of them is this path here. So the EFI folder, the boot folder, and then bootx64.efi. That would be for a 64-bit bootloader. Now, this isn't in the UEFI specification. This is just what many vendors do as a fallback mechanism. So it's not guaranteed to be booted this way. So here's an example of a UEFI application that you could actually create yourself that just says hello world, okay? It talks to the UEFI firmware to print hello world to the screen. You can see it's much easier than our legacy BIOS assembly example. And UEFI can do a lot more than this. You've got access to heaps, so you can call things like malloc and free, the UEFI equivalents. And it's almost like a kernel in itself, the UEFI firmware. It's a very simple kernel, but it's much more advanced than the traditional BIOS. So obviously when you're at this point, your UEFI bootloader could load additional kernel files from the disk into memory and then jump to them. And then your kernel would fully boot the system at that point. So yeah, UEFI is a massive improvement, and it's the interface you should be using if you want your kernel code to run on modern hardware. Thanks for watching this free YouTube video. You can even learn kernel development in the description and put those assembly skills to practice. Check the video description where you'll get a link to the paid course at Dragon's App, and you'll learn how to build your very own 32-bit protective mode kernel that's multitasking all from scratch.